Hello viewers, today I am going to tell you about the principles of the formation of a rag. Though the term rag is always associated with the practical aspect of vocal or instrumental music, yet the students will be surprised to know that a rag has complete scientific basis and it is erected upon some strict principles which form a rag and make it presentable. But before knowing about the scientific basis or the principles upon which a rag is formed, we should know what is rag or the definition of rag. Rag is the base of Indian music. In fact, Indian music is revealed through rags. In old Sanskrit texts, rag has been defined as Ranjiti iti raga, which means which colors the mind is a rag. In Sanskrit text Abhinav Rag Manjari, rag has been defined as Yoyan Dhvani Visheshatu Swarvarana Vibhushita Ranjako Janachitana Sara Kathite Bhude, which means such a peculiar combination of swar and varans having the capability of pleasing the minds of the listeners is known as rag by the intellectuals. No doubt, the practical presentation of a rag pleases the listeners, but instead of going into the practical aspect of rag, I will elaborate its theoretical aspect and the scientific basis. Scientifically, it is essential to know about the principles which are responsible for its formation. In the ancient times, present rag gayan system was not in vogue. Jati gayan was in vogue instead of rag gayan. In the ancient times, 10 lakshans or the principles were laid down for Jati gayan, which were Grah, Ansh, Nyas, Apnyas, Audvatva, Shadvatva, Alpatva, Bahotva, Mandar and Tar. These 10 lakshans of Jati Gayan were followed strictly in its presentation in the ancient times. But in the present day's Rag Gayan system, some rules are followed, but some principles like Grah, Nyas and Apnyas do not carry their old significance. While analyzing scientifically, we find that the present day Rag Gayan too is erected upon some strict principles. And while performing, we follow these rules laid down for the Rag Gayan. These rules are termed as the principles of a rag formation. So now let's know what these principles are. The first and the foremost principle is a rag must belong to any thought, that is the parent scale, from which it is produced. In Hindustani music, all rags are classified under 10 thoughts. Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande, the greatest authority on modern Hindustani music, has accepted only 10 thoughts for the classification of rags in Hindustani music. Out of 72 male kartas of Pandit Venkat Mukhi of the south. Pandit Bhatkhande was of the opinion that 10 thoughts were sufficient to cover up all the rags in vogue in Hindustani music. Hence, these 10 thoughts are known as Pandit Bhatkhande's 10 thoughts. These are number 1, Bilawal, number 2, Kalyan or Jaman, number 3, Khamaj, number 4, Kafi, number 5 Asavari, number 6 Bhairavi, number 7 Bhairav, 8 Purvi, 9 Marwa, and number 10 is Todi. All the above said 10 thats possess different swars of the scale, and all the rags prevalent in Hindustani music are grouped under these 10 thats. So, it is essential for a rag to belong any of these 10 thats according to the swar of a rag. However, there are a number of rags in Hindustani music in which both the varieties of swar, that is Shuddh swar as well as Vikrit swar, are used simultaneously. And for such rags, this classification seems to be inadequate. But we can notice when such cases like using both the varieties of swar occur, one of the two swar in most cases is dominating and the other is weaker. Such rag is grouped under the that of the dominating swar. For example, in rag Jajavanti, both Gandhar, that is Komal Gandhar, and Shuddh Gandhar, and both Nishad, that is Komal Nishad and Shuddh Nishad, are used. The that of rag Jajavanti is Khamaj, because as compared to Komal Gandhar, Shuddh Gandhar is dominating. And of course, the use of Shuddh Nishad is there in a row, but the regular note is Komal Gandhar. Hence, the rag is grouped under Khamaj that, which has Nishad or Ni as Komal swar, and the rest of the notes of the that are Shuddh. So, now coming back over to the next principle, which is a rag must have at least 5 notes. Any composition which comprises less than 5 notes is not considered rag. In other words, we can say that a rag can be formed by dropping either 1 or 2 notes, but never more than 2 notes out of the full scale. Let me elaborate this principle. In Hindustani music, we have 3 main jatis, or we can say the categories of rag on the basis of the numbers of the swar used in rag, which are Sampurn, Shadav, and Odav. Sampurn jati is that which contains all the 7 notes of the scale. That means not even a single swar or note is dropped in a rag of Sampurn jati. Rag Bilawal, Yaman, Bhairav, etc. are the example of this category. Shadav jati is that which contains 6 notes of the octave by dropping any one note and is hexatonic. In Hindustani music, Rag Marwa, Puriya, Sohni are the best examples of this category. Odav jati of rag contains 5 notes of the octave by dropping any 2 notes and is pentatonic. There are number of examples of Odav jati rags in Hindustani music, such as Bhupali, Deshkar, Malkons, Chandrakons, etc. These 3 main jatis of rag can be shown in a table. Just have a look on this table. It is not irrelevant to acquaint with the rule for dropping the notes in any rag. While dropping any one note in hexatonic rags, Shadaj or Sa note cannot be dropped in any rag, because Sa is the keynote of any rag. Except Sa, any other note out of the remaining 6 notes of the scale can be dropped in hexatonic rags, depending upon the structure of a rag. and while dropping any two notes in any pentatonic rag, ma and pa, these two notes cannot be dropped together. The reason being that these two notes are common notes in both the tetrachords of the scale or octave, that is Purvang and Uttrang. Hence, these two common notes in both the parts of the octave are not allowed to be omitted simultaneously in any rag. The omission of swars turn by turn gives rise to a large variety of Shadav and Odav melodies. One more point which is worth mentioning, that in Hindustani music, all the rags in vogue cannot be categorized under the aforesaid Sampurna, Shadav and Odav jatis of rag, because there is a restricted number of such rags having all the 7 notes in Aro and Avro, or 6 or 5 notes in both the ascending and descending order of notes. Yes, here we are reminded of another very important rule of rag, which is a rag must possess Aro and Avro both, that is ascending and descending order of notes, because a rag is not revealed completely merely from its Aro. Aro and Avro both are necessarily required to complete a rag formation. The number of notes may vary in Aro and Avro of a rag. Hence, the different number of notes in Aro and Avro of a rag further generates more jatis of rag. For example, when Aro of a rag is Sampurna and Avro is Shadav or Odav, another jati of rag is generated. Thus, mixing other jatis with Sampurna makes Sampurna Sampurna, Sampurna Shadav and Sampurna Odav jatis. Similarly, while mixing Shadav jati with other jatis, 3 more jatis of rag are generated, which are Shadav Sampurna, Shadav Shadav and Shadav Odav. In the same manner, mixing Odav jati with other jatis, Odav Sampurna, Odav Shadav and Odav jatis are generated. So, in this way, when 3 main jatis, that is Sampurna, Shadav and Odav, are mixed together with other jatis, then 9 jatis are generated, which is shown in a table. Just have a look on this table. Usually, all the rags of Hindustani music fall under these 9 jatis of rags. But there are some rags which do not abide by the rules of the jatis and use all the 12 notes, that is Shuddh and Vikrit in rags. Bhairavi, Pilu, etc. are such rags in which musicians take the liberty of using all the 12 notes on certain other conditions. In that case, these may be said the exceptions of the principle of jatis of rag. Reminding you once again, connected with the principle of jatis of rag formation, that in any Indian rag, sa is the keynote. Hence, sa cannot be dropped out in any rag. Secondly, ma and pa, these two notes are not allowed to be dropped together. As already stated, these two notes fall in both the parts of the octave, that is Purvang and Uttrang, the first and the second tetrachords of the octave. Sa re ga ma pa is Purvang and ma pa dha ni sa is Uttrang. So, ma and pa, these two notes are common in both the parts, and these are not allowed to be omitted simultaneously in any rag. The next very important principle is any rag has fixed Vadi and definite Samvadi notes. Vadi and Samvadi swars carry very important place in any rag. The most important note in any rag and the maximum used note is known as Vadiswar. Rags are distinguished from one another by their Vadiswars, that is by giving emphasis on the different notes of the scale, and by special swar sangatis of the note, that is the combination of notes. Though each note carries its own importance in the development of a rag, and an accurate and harmonious combination of all the notes maintain the melody of a rag from the beginning to the end, yet some notes have special importance. These are known as Vadi and Samvadi of rags. In old Sanskrit texts on Indian music, it is mentioned Prayoge Bohle Swar Vadi Rajayatra Kiyate or Vaditi iti Vadi, which means the maximum used note in a rag and which is the king of the kingdom of a rag is Vadiswar, and which helps in revealing a rag is known as Vadiswar. Except Vadi, the second note in importance in any Indian rag is Samvadiswar. In any rag, Vadi and Samvadi, these two notes are the strongest pillars on which the whole structure of a rag is developed. Let me narrate in brief the rule about fixing Upsamvadi note in any rag. As I had stated earlier, there are two tetrachords of the Indian musical scale, known as Purvang and Uttarang. Vadi and Samvadi swars remain in these two different tetrachords, following the principle of the fourth and fifth, which is also known as the cycle of the fourth and fifth notes. This simply means that Samvadi swar of any rag has to be at the distance of fourth or fifth note from its Vadi swar. In other words, if the Vadi swar of any rag is in Purvang, Samvadi has to be in Uttarang of the scale. These two notes play a very significant role in the two different tetrachords of the scale. Thus, here lies the importance of Vadi and Samvadi swar in the formation of any rag. Another important principle is, in a rag, two notes of the same denomination such as Shuddh and Vikrit, that is flat or sharp note, should not come just one after the other consecutively. For example, Shuddh and Komal-re, Shuddh-ga and Komal-ga, Shuddh-ma and Tivra-ma, etc. Yet there are some rags in Hindustani music which do not abide by this rule. Rag Lalit and some other rags are the exceptions of this rule of the rag, which take such notes one after the other. A rag must possess Aroh and Avroh both, that is ascending and descending order of notes. As stated earlier, a rag is not revealed completely merely from its Aroh. As we have seen in the jatis of rag, that different number of swars are used in Aroh and Avroh for a rag. For example, in a rag, Aroh may be Sampurn, but Avroh may be Shadav or Odav. On the other side, Aroh may be Shadav or Odav, and Avroh may be otherwise. Hence, Aroh and Avroh both are necessarily required to complete a rag formation. Another very unique principle of rag is that every Indian rag has been assigned the certain time of day or night for its presentation or for its performance. It is believed that only in the assigned period the rag appears to be at the highest of its melodic beauty. According to the late French musicologist Alain Denelou, for at the wrong hour, rag could never be developed so perfectly, nor could it so greatly move an audience. In ancient Indian musical texts, Sangeet Makarand, it is mentioned, Yatha Kale Samarambh Dam Geetam Bhavte Ranjakam. The older generation of Indian musicians in particular believed that disaster would be evoked if Geet or Rag is not sung in its proper time. Such a significance of performing the rag in its assigned time has been mentioned in the old musical treatises. The time theory of Indian music or Indian rags is not merely arbitrary. Instead, there are some rules according to which rags have been assigned definite time of day or night, such as rags with re and dha komal swar, that is flat notes, rags with re and dha shuddh note, that is full tone notes, and rags with ga and ni komal swar, that is flat notes. These three categories of rag based upon the notes of the particular category help in fixing the time of rags. Then there is one more rule regarding the fixing of the time of rags, which is Purvang and Uttarang. This rule is also fair enough for fixing the time of rags. About these rules, I had discussed in detail in my lecture exclusively on the time cycle theory of rags. Though in the recent times, in the different recording and performing situations, the time theory of rags is not followed strictly. Yet, in the live performances, time theory still works. It has its significance, and if the rag is performed in its proper allotted time, it leaves its own impact on the minds of the listeners. Though the time theory of rag is not directly related with the principles of formation of a rag, yet it is deeply related with the presentation of a rag. Though mentioning in the last, but above every principle of any rag formation is, a rag must please the minds of the listeners. Even the definition of rag in our old Indian Sanskrit text is found, Ranjako Janachitana Sara Kathita Buddhe, which itself speaks that the root word for a rag is ranj, which means to please. Ranjati iti raga. To means that a rag must have the capability to please the listeners. The beautiful words of Pandit Ravi Shankar, mentioned in his book My Music, My Life, present the accurate and the complete picture of the principles of rag formation, which are: rag is a definite, scientific, still, aesthetic, melodic form made up of series of notes within the octave, each one different from every other and distinguished by its own particular sequence of notes, number of tones, ascending and descending order, most prominent notes, notes of different lengths, characteristic phrases and principal mood. It is a melodic base in Indian classical music on which the musician improvises in any style for any duration and in any tempo, either as solo or accompanied by drums, and it may have a composed bass, song or instrumental cut. I think this is the perfect definition of rag, which comprises all the principles of formation of rag. To sum up, we can say that rag is a base of Indian music. In fact, Indian music is revealed through rags. No doubt, in the practical form, rag pleases the minds of the listeners to its full extent. But while analyzing its theoretical aspect, we find that a rag is erected strictly upon scientific basis. It is based upon some strict principles like That, Jati, Vadi Samvadi Swar, its Aro and Avro, or the pattern of notes that are followed in a particular rag, its time theory, and above all its melodiousness. These rules or the principles are followed in every rag and give the accurate form to a rag. Hence, we call these the principles of rag formation. Thank you.